Now we'll look into adding volume to our spine as our character squashes and stretches, and we'll see how we can control that volume for the most control. We have our character squashing and stretching vertically, but it's not really a squash and stretch just yet, not until we have that volume in there. So let's go ahead and add that. We'll go to our expression editor, and what we can do is actually still use this V scale for the most part. But let's go ahead, and what we'll do is have the rest of our attributes for our scale Y and Z for our bones, for the same bones, equal to this V scale, and see what we come up with to see if that's really going to work out for us. So we will, going back to our stretchy spine expression, we'll hit enter a few times so we can go down to a couple lines down. We'll make a category name, so we'll put a comment and call this section volume so we know exactly what it's for. After we have spelled volume correctly, there we go. Alright, so underneath this, what I like to do here, rather than putting it all in one line, for these three bones, I just like to basically tie the scale Y, scale Z for bone A, and then go one line underneath bone B, one line again underneath, and following that same pattern, just for this vol scale, to keep everything organized. So we'll do just that. We'll say bn underscore SPA01 dot SY this time is equal to bn underscore SPA01 dot SZ for scale Z is equal to now our V scale. So that's $V scale. And then put the semicolon. From there we can go ahead and copy this line and paste and paste. Okay, just so we can now switch for the next line, switch the A to a B. Simple as that. And the next line, the last line, switch the A to a C. Now, let's go ahead and hit edit and see what we come up with. We'll hit edit, everything's working fine. We'll go ahead and minimize our expression editor. Okay, so what will we end up with when we move this control? Whoa, look at that. This is not working right at all. It is going to work for us, the V scale, but we need to change it around a bit. Notice, okay, as we stretch our character, of course, his volume is going to want to be stretched as well. So we're going to want to have the inverse of what we're currently getting, okay, as we move them down and as we move them up. So how can we do that? Well, it's very simple. Let's go ahead and just zero out our control again, go back to our expression editor, and this is as simple as taking this number and basically multiplying it by its inverse, or taking the inverse of this number. Well, how can we do that? Well, that's going to be as simple as putting a 1 divided by the V scale for our solution that we currently have. So rather than using V scale, we'll just, again, use the reciprocal. So, again, the reciprocal is 1 divided by this current value that we have. It's as simple as that. So we'll go ahead and add that to our expression, 1 divided by for each line. Now, what are we going to end up with now? Let's go ahead and hit edit and see what we come up with. We'll go to our control and bring it up, and notice now we're getting the results that we want. This is really cool. Notice how we're getting this nice squash, this nice stretch as we move our control around. And this not only applies to our chest control, that is, but also to our hips. Notice the functionality we're going to be able to get as we move around. This is really cool. We're getting some great results already. Wonderful. Well, now that we have this, now that we have the results that we're looking for out of our spine, let's look at a way we can control this squash and stretch. What I like to do, there's several options you can choose, but what I like to do is actually make a squash stretch volume GUI, or user interface. What that allows us to do is not only control how much our volume affects our character as we squash and stretch and moving our controls, but we're able to animate that. So what you can get essentially is this nice little jiggle. Okay, if you wanted to, if you went ahead and animated that GUI correctly. So this, again, is going to give us the most amount of control. We're not only going to be able to control our volume, but also animate that control if we ever needed to. So let's go ahead and work on that. What we can do is go to our front view. Let's go to our front view. And what I like to do is go to create and just use the CV curve tool linear just to make a few things as far as the window is concerned. So we can go ahead and make a window just snapping to grid. Okay, making sure it's something more of a square, that is, excuse me. Okay, well, this is more rectangular, but you get the idea. We're just making this window. And then for the knob or for the controller, what I like to do is go to create, go to NURB surfaces, and use a circle. And then we can just hold X to snap to the grid and make a small circle, then let go or release X and make that circle a little bit smaller. Okay, and this is just so everything will be aligned the way we'd like it to. So we have our window and we also have our circle. And from here with the circle, what I like to do is go ahead and just make sure that it's going to be aligned with our window the way we like it to be. So seeing that our window is here, let's even go back to the front view. Since it was kind of difficult to see our window as we deselect it, we can quickly hide the grid. Just hold spacebar, go to display, hide the grid. Alright, that's going to work out for us. So, can move our control down and maybe even bring this window up a little bit more. So with it selected, we'll center its pivot, scale up the window a little bit more. Okay, maybe even up in the Y. Doesn't need to be too large. Okay, then we could select both it and the circle. Let's go ahead and move them over. And once we have established a nice position, let's go ahead and go back to our grid so we can get the circle where we'd like it to be. So we're going to need 3 categories. This is going to control our first category. This can control our bone spine A, the circle that is. So with it selected, let's go ahead and actually snap it to the grid. This will also help us to get an even amount of values when we go to apply everything, as we'll see. So with the circle here, with our window there, what we can also do is make like a little level so we can see how much we're moving up this circle. So with our window selected, we'll duplicate it, scale it in, okay, then move it over so that it'll be aligned with the circle. So we can just select the X transform and hold down X and snap it right where we need to do so it'll be aligned. And looking at this, it looks like it can be scaled in a little bit more. And I'd also like to bring down the top verts just so that the circle is limit will go right to this point here. This looks like about a value of 4 or so. Okay, and we're not going to want to bring the circle down at all, only up. So we'll set up those limits later on. Let's go ahead and continue setting up this window. So now we can select what we have here, duplicate it, use again the X transform, and just move it over. You can just snap it right next to it. And then again, duplicate our next set, use the X transform, hold X, and move it over again. Alright, so this is looking pretty cool so far. What we can now do from here, if we wanted to, is go ahead and adjust our window a little bit more, just so that it is matched up, just so everything looks uniform together. Okay, so we have some, we have our what will be our controllers, we have their levels, and we have our window. What we can do is go ahead and select everything, center its pivot, and also freeze transformation so we can clean up the transformations. Again, we want clean controls as possible. Okay, now before we go ahead and finish this, what we could also do is label this window so we know what it does. So let's go ahead and create that. We'll go to create, we'll go to text, and underneath text, let's go ahead and call this our squash stretch GUI. And we could abbreviate it, so we go SQU for squash underscore STR for stretch underscore GUI for GUI. And we'll hit create. And we don't need to ungroup anything. We can use this group. It'll work for us. So we can just center its pivot, move it over, and scale it up. Alright. So now we can even move it up as well. I wouldn't recommend freezing transformations, and we won't need to select this at all. We'll actually template it and have it controlled by our window wherever we move it. But I wouldn't recommend freezing it, because if we do, our words will just stretch out. So in order to prevent that, we don't need to worry about that at all. Okay, so we have everything in place that we need to, and what we'll do is stop the lesson here, and then the next lesson we'll work on cleaning up the rest of our GUI and seeing if we can go ahead and finish up the scale of our spine by having these controls we made for it influence our volume preservation.